In our last video, we showed you how to make a settling bucket, which can also be used for the clarifying step as well. And all that involved was taking a bucket and a bulkhead adapter with a bottling spigot on it, and drilling a hole, putting it in there, and then you were good to go. In this video, we're going to show you how to make the coarse filter. The same steps are also used for making the diatomaceous earth filter, the fine filter. But it's a little more involved with the sand, because with the diatomaceous earth, you're using food-grade diatomaceous earth to begin with, so it's clean and ready to go. All you've got to do is, follow the steps of putting it in there. There's no washing or preparing of the medium to begin with. So, to begin with, you're going to need a bucket. You're going to need several buckets. Then you're going to turn it upside down. You're going to drill a bunch of holes through it, okay? Because you're going to have to wash the gravel. If you can come over here and take a look at some of the materials we've got. So at Lowe's, I picked up some all-purpose gravel. You can see it's quite dirty. And I got some play sand. The play sand I got on sale when they were getting ready to go with summer. I think it was $1 a bag. Normally it's about $3.50 a bag. So we got it on sale. You can pick this up in your backyard, of course. I like this because it's already pre-washed, but we're going to show you what to do if you start with sand from a stream bed or a beach or even your backyard. You have to be careful with some yard sand, just because if you've had people do spraying for ticks or bugs or whatever, then there's going to be pesticide in that, and so you're going to have to wash it really carefully because you're running your drinking water through that. The purpose of the filter is to remove harmful things from your water, not add them, obviously. Okay, so you don't actually need to buy this, but certainly you can. The gravel you use doesn't really matter so much. The gravel has no filtering value. It's just meant to keep the filter together. You'll see what I'm talking about when we set it up a little later. Okay, so you take your bucket, turn it upside down. You're going to need some very small drill bits. And you're just going to drill a whole bunch of holes in that. In the bottom of the bucket, and that's going to be for the water to work through, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start drilling some holes, and Missy's going to pause the film, and once I have a bunch drilled, then we'll pick up where we left off. So I'm just adding lots of holes here. The more the merrier. That's what the water's going to go out of after it's been filtered through the sand. You're also going to do that with the same thing with the diatomaceous earth buckets. We're going to do this twice. So if you're using a rechargeable drill, you're going to have to make sure you have your batteries well charged. Okay, so ideally I'd like to have a few more holes in that, but that's looking pretty good. Don't know if you can see that. Got to dust it off. Little blue plastic thingies everywhere. Of course, there's some in. I don't know if you can see. If I hold that up to the sunlight, you can kind of see some of the light coming through there. That's what we're looking for. All right. Okay. Now, so how are we going to wash this stuff? Well, this is a little trick. We'll start with the gravel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some water in here, just a little bit. The rest I'm going to take some gravel here and put it in there. Now, I'm going to use some bleach, which, the truth is you don't actually have to do, but try not to get it on your clothes. There's several ways that you can do the washing and sterilization of this stuff. This has a lot of dirt on it. If I thought it had any grease or oil in it, then I'd want to use dish soap to break that down and get it out, because you don't want it. You want to make sure this stuff that you're going to be filtering through is fairly clean. Now the sand, you're not even quite as concerned about the biologics, although you'd like to get rid of those as much as possible, because this is the coarse filter stage, which happens well before your actual disinfection stage, which could be used with either chemicals or sunlight or UV radiation or a variety of different methods. So you're going to take care of those later, but what you don't want to do is add any chemical compounds to what you're doing. Okay, so got a pair of scissors. I'm going to open the bag. Okay, come in here and take a look at that. Okay, so I've got it's quite dirty. You can see how it's coming off of my hands. It's just dirt. It's fine. We're going to dump it in the one that we've just put the holes in. Now, you don't need that much. I certainly don't need 50 pounds of it. Okay, that's way more than I'll need. So I used about half of it. I probably could have used, you know, half of that or less, have been fine. Okay, now I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down inside this water. Ooh, gotta be careful with that. I should have done a little slower. You see the water comes up into the gravel. Okay. And then, you know, I'm just going to use my bare hands, although there is bleach in there, so now ideally what I probably should have done was do this with regular water a few times just to get the muddy stuff off and then do the bleach. The reason, you know, a reason why you might consider doing it this way is that if I use the bleach first, I know it's going to take care of anything in there that's going to be a problem, and then I'm still going to have to, you know, wash it a couple other times with regular water that's not going to have bleach in it, so you don't have, you know, rock with lots of bleach in it. But the truth is, it's not going to matter, because when it comes time to disinfect your water in that stage, you're going to be adding bleach anyways. A little bit of bleach, which will be highly diluted when you use this as a filter, is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Okay, so now I'm going to lift this out, and since we drilled those nice holes there, the dirty water is going to drain out the bottom. Okay. Gravel's a lot cleaner, but it's not perfectly clean, so we're going to grab another bucket. We're going to wash that down with just regular water. Okay, so what you missed was I went ahead and pulled the gravel out of there, out of the water bucket after flushing it, and I dumped the water out. The bleach I've reserved. I can use that again later on for something. You don't want to dump it on your lawn, obviously, because it's fairly concentrated. It's more concentrated than your laundry water would be, for example. You could dump it down your drain, or you can just leave it outside for a day or so, and the bleach will just kind of all evaporate out, and it's not a problem. That's the most environmentally conscious thing to do. If that's something you're concerned about. Okay, so let's do, we're going to wash it a couple more times. So I'm going to put it back in the rinse bucket and pour more water in there. This is like the instructions on your shampoo bottle, right? You lather it up, put the fresh water in there, stir it around a little bit to wash it, rinse and repeat, and do this until the water, when you pull it up, comes up reasonably clean. It doesn't have to come up perfectly clear, but it needs to come up reasonably clean. Just to, you don't want to start off with a filter with gravel in it that's already going to fill some of the pores of your sand. All right, so that water's already significantly cleaner than the last set. Take the water, look out below, and water your lawn. Okay. And you do that until the water comes up reasonably clean. Go ahead and pause. Okay, as you can see, the gravel is a lot cleaner than it was before. It's not leaving any residue on my hands at all. I did wash it one more time off camera. As you can see, we've already used about 5 gallons of water in getting this prepared, and that's just the gravel. We haven't even started with the sand yet. This is why it's important to make these preparations in advance. It doesn't, once you're out of water, needing water, it's awfully hard to find the water necessary to prepare to have a way of cleaning the water. Now, you can use creek water, it's fine just to wash it in the river, but I think you're going to have enough to deal with at that time, and it's better to have it prepared in advance. Okay, the next step, after we're going to set the gravel aside, the next step is going to be the sand. Now, as I said before, I have clay sand here, which is already washed and fairly clean. But, not everybody's going to start with that. You can get sand for free from your backyard, or potentially from the, from the beach. Although, be careful doing that. But this is what I've got. I'm going to go ahead and show you the same process of cleaning this as I did for the gravel. It's going to be a little different because the sand is small enough, fine enough that it will go through the holes that we drilled at the bottom of the bucket. And so we're going to take some precautions to reserve our sand. All right? All right, so I'm putting some sand in the bucket in preparation for washing it. That's probably quite a bit more sand than I'll actually need, so let's go ahead and stop. Now this bucket this time doesn't have holes in the bottom. That bucket's over here, okay? And the reason is that when the water goes down through the sand will trap whatever dirt is in there. So if we want to actually wash the sand, we have to stir it around and then dump the water off the top, trying to get as much of the junk out of there as we possibly can. Okay, so it's a little different. The gravel, the dirt would kind of drain down the bottom and you could just wash it and toss the water out a couple times. The sand you're going to have to wash in the bucket and pour the water off the top. Okay. So you can see I'm getting this this foamy scum off of the sand. I'm told that that's from the detergents used in the washing process to make this suitable for kids to play in. It's not harmful, it's not going to make you sick or anything, but we'd rather not have it in our filter. So I'm stirring it around. You can see as I stir it around that a bunch of stuff in the sand is coming loose. And when I do this, I'm going to let it sit for just a few seconds before I dump the water out, because I want any suspended sand particles to settle back down into the bucket, so I'm not throwing those out. Now I'm getting my hand deep enough that I'm scraping the sand all the way to the bottom of the bucket. If you have sensitive skin, you can wear dishwasher gloves or something to, but there's no detergent in here, so it's not that big of a deal except for the soap that's there. So I'm waiting a few seconds, and I'm going to slowly pour just the water off. If you get going a little too fast, it'll take some of your finer particle sand, and the fine sand is what you'd really like. Okay, now come over here and get the front. So at this point, the sand has gotten to the lip, so I'm done. I can't go any further than that in this one. I gotta let it drop back down in. Okay. Then we're gonna stir it around and add some more water, and do it a second time. We're gonna do this several times until the water is never gonna be clear. Because you have such fine particles of sand in there, but it'll be clearer, or cleaner than it was to begin with. Again, stir it around, get your hand all the way down into the bottom. If you have a hard time getting to the bottom, just wash sand twice, in two stages, so that you can really stir it around well. Nope, that's sand. Okay, so there we are again. All right, now here the remaining water is a lot clearer than it was. We probably could stop. Yeah, that's good enough. We could stop there or do one more. Maybe I'll do one more. I should note that the sand that they use in municipal systems for filtering is not washed this clean. Alright, so they make sure it's clean from pesticide, and I mean some of it is just steam cleaned, and then they go with it that way. So it is washed from pesticide and so forth, but they don't worry about the particles of dirt because those aren't a problem. Alright, this is the last time. You can go ahead and pause it. You don't need to see this. Okay, so we're ready to actually build our filter. So I'm going to turn a bucket upside down. Now I recognize that the top's a little bigger than the bottom, but that's the point, okay, of what we're doing. We're going to put the top down, and I'm going to take a Sharpie, and I'm just going to draw a circle around where the bucket is on the cloth. Now the cloth is folded over underneath the bucket, so I've got 2 layers thick. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little bigger than this. I wouldn't make it any smaller. Of course, it didn't draw on the stuff that was wet, so I have to be careful with that. Okay, I'm going to remove the bucket. That left a mark, and I'm just going to take scissors and cut that out. You can pause. Okay, as you can see, my cutting skills aren't great, but that's fine. I'm cutting a little bigger than what I laid out. And that's fine. I've got 2 layers thick now. Okay, I'm going to do this a couple of times, but the first time I've got my bucket with the holes in the bottom that you can see the light through. Okay, and I'm going to put this in the bottom of the bucket and lay it out. And this takes a little bit of patience to get it all laid out perfectly. Try to keep the two matched up so when you put it in, it works. Now it's easier to fold it over in half and then put it in and work it around. You don't want any of the bottom of the bucket showing. Okay, you want it to be completely covered. It's okay if it goes a little ways up the side. You don't want it too far up the side, because if you do, then the water will hit the sheet and by capillary action will skip the bottom bits of the sand. So it's fine if it skips the last half inch, but if you had this all the way up the side of the bucket, then the water would just skip the filtration of the sand and go straight down through the fibers into it, and the fiber will usually let more particulate through than the sand would. Some of the singed polyester fabric that's used in filters, we've got some over there on the table, or we did, won't give you the capillary action, and it's also, you can get it to guaranteed mesh levels down to 10 microns, sometimes even smaller, so that makes this a really tight filter. But you could, a tight thread count sheet is good enough. The sand will do its job. Okay, once we've got that done, we're going to pour some sand in there. You're going to be really careful to try to get it in the middle. In fact, you know what? Just to be sure, I'm going to do a couple of handfuls, because I want it to work the cloth to the side, not fold the cloth over again away from the edge of the bucket. Okay, and of course the cloth is there to keep the sand from leaving your bucket with the filtered water. Okay, that's good enough for that. Now I need to just dump the rest of the sand in there. Okay, so we've got the sand in there. Probably could have gotten away with using a little more sand, but 6 to 8 inches of sand is plenty. Is plenty to make this. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out one more layer of cloth to go on top of this, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to pause. I'll do that off camera because you've already seen the process. Okay, well I told you I was going to do this off camera, but I've been neglected to tell you something that's actually pretty important. And that's that for the top one, you're going to want it to be significantly larger than the size of the bucket, because you want this one to come up, and you'll see why. But I'd make it a good 6 inches to a side bigger than the bucket. And you can eyeball it. I'm using the round of the table here to help me. You can eyeball it when you lay it out. It doesn't have to be exact, but you'll see why. Okay. All right, and then I'll cut that out. Now I'll cut it out, and I'll do that off camera. But okay, so you see we've cut this thing out. It's approximately round. It's not perfect. It's going to be a lot bigger when I stick it over the bucket. going to be significantly bigger than the top of the sand, and that's the point. Okay, so you're going to make it bigger than the sand, and you're going to try to get it, push it down in, from the center fairly even all the way around. It's touching the sand now. Now I'm going to put gravel in on top of that sheet. Again, kind of a handful at a time, forcing the sheet to go up against the side of the walls and not letting the sheet fall down. So the sheet's trying to fall in, but you're just going to hold it up and get the gravel in it so it goes all the way to the walls, with the sheet coming up the side of the walls. So it's a bit of a painstaking process, but it's you'll see why. You only need an inch of the gravel. Technically, you don't even need that. You just need enough to hold this thing into place. I like to put a good inch on there because I want to have it strong. Okay. Once you've got that done, you've got that extra along the sides, you can take this and then just tuck it into the edges. Okay, see, I'm just tucking that in. It doesn't really... The capillary action here doesn't matter because the gravel doesn't have any filtration role here. What the gravel is here for is to prevent channeling of water when you pour the water in. So you've done your settling stage, you've done your clarifying stage, you've done those two stages if they were necessary, if you started with water that wasn't visibly clear. And then you're going to have your water in a bucket or some kind of tank, and you're going to dump it in here. Now if you just dumped it into the sand, it would drill a hole through the sand, just the weight of the water. The stream of water would drill a hole through the sand part of the way to the bottom, and then it doesn't perform its role. So if you go to a municipal water treatment facility, it's going to bring the water in very gently on top of the system rather than just blowing it in there through a high pressure stream. So all this gravel does is it gives you something to absorb that stream. So when the stream comes in, it won't drill its way down through the filter. Now the reason why you made this cloth larger is that you may need to check your sand and see how it's doing. If you've filtered a lot of dirty water, you may have to skim the top inch off of that sand and put fresh sand in there. If that's the case, or you don't actually have to skim it off, you can just rewash the sand. Right? You'd pull this out, you'd wash the sand in place. Actually, you probably want to do it in a bucket with no holes in the bottom. Wash the sand really well a couple times and put it back in, and you're ready to go again. Filters used for pools, filters used for municipalities, they don't dump the sand all the time. They just have a wash stage that will churn that sand up and then dump the water that comes out of it, not into the water system, somewhere else for sewer treatment. Okay, now after a while of using it this way, you decide you want to get it. You take the rocks out to check your sand or to rewash it. Since you've got this thing nice and tall and long, all you do is you grab this cloth, pull it up, and you're good to go. Now a couple rocks fell in there. It wasn't a big deal. I can just reach down there and pull them out by hand. Okay, but it's not crucial that those even be taken out. Okay, and then you could wash it again. Now remember that there is a piece of sheet or filter cloth down here at the bottom underneath the sand, so you can't just wash this in place. You'd have to move it over to another bucket with with no holes in the bottom. Wash it really well, and then again make sure you have that piece of cloth there at the bottom of your bucket with holes in it, and then put the sand in carefully like we just did. So just repeat the process and you're good to go again with that bucket. With that, you want to get the fine sand again because that will filter as fine as you possibly can, because this filter can be stirred around and reused repeatedly, whereas with your diatomaceous earth filter you're going to skim the top layers off when they start to become a little bit fouled, and you consume that. You don't actually consume the sand, you just can reuse it. Alright, that's really all there is to it. When you were done doing that, you'd put the thing back in there, try to get it centered, and then roll it over to the side. Again, that rock doesn't perform any filtration. All it does is keep the water from channeling its way through the filter and make sure that the filtration stage is actually going. Pause. Yeah. Okay, I mentioned before that you can get some of this singed polyester filter fabric. This particular one is 10 microns, meaning that it's 10 micron. So the largest particle that can fit through this mesh is 10 microns. Now, we're prepared to guarantee that that's absolute. So you should assume that 85% of particles 10 microns or larger will be filtered by this fabric. Okay, so this isn't a final solution. I mean, some people think, oh, you can just run it through the fabric, the fabric would be good. But you can see that it's a very fine polyester. It is food grade. It's purchased on Amazon from a company called Duda Diesel. I did verify with them what the process was to make sure that it actually is food grade, because a lot of people use this in making biodiesels and things like that to make sure it's well filtered when they're using it for their trucks and so forth. But this is a decent option. It's a big piece for, you know, 10, 12 bucks. You can make multiple filters with it. It's also a little thicker, a little more durable than the sheet would be. So it's a good option, but it does add a little bit to the expense. Okay, so I mentioned before about the problem with the channeling. Since I've got the gravel in there, I'm not worried about it, because when I drop, if I pour water in, it's still gonna, you know, move the gravel around a little bit. Okay, because now if I do this and I see that I can touch sheet, then I probably want to put a little more gravel in there. You don't want to get to that the water so easily drills through the rock that you put there. Now, if you're pouring it from high enough, it's going to drill through 6 inches of gravel. I mean, just get it down low. You know, a normal pour in it should be fine. Okay, I didn't put necessarily clean water in here. What would be interesting, if I can do it, would be to let you see what's coming out of this. See, the bottom is dirty, unfortunately. Pick up a little bit of that water, let a little bit of it drain through. Now, there's no reason why you couldn't fill that bucket all the way to the top with water. In fact, when you set this filter up for its final use, to actually use it, and you have a bucket with, you know, the holes in it and the diatomaceous filter set up, you will set this on top of the diatomaceous filter and just let it go. You have to be careful with how much water you put in the sand filter, because the water is going to move through the sand a lot faster than it'll move through the diatomaceous earth. Okay, this is one of those things where you do it and kind of leave it, but pour a little water at a time through the sand so that it doesn't start coming out the sides between the two filters, and you just waste a lot of the water that you've painstakingly clarified and settled. Okay, that's probably enough. You see the water in here, you see how it's kind of dirty up here at the top? Crystal clear water coming out the bottom. Okay, that's been, and there was even some sand in there already, but that's been filtered down to, well, probably 5 to 10 microns. It depends. That sand's pretty fine, so maybe 10 microns, maybe 5 microns. Not all the way down. Some people say you get it down to 1. I don't trust that. Yeah, this is the coarse filter that we're talking about in the flow chart. So this is coarse filter. Then, when you make one of these with diatomaceous earth, it'll be a fine filter. Pause for a second. Okay, so this is how we do a coarse filter. The video is sort of long because we went through every little step and showed you everything that you do. It's not that hard. You get a bucket, you drill some holes in it, lots of little holes in it. You get some sand, some gravel, you wash them up as best you can. You put some cloth or filter fabric in the bottom of the bucket with the holes in it, and you put sand in to make sure it moves all the way to the edge and doesn't let the edges come up. Get the sand in there, then you put another piece of cloth on top of that, a much longer one. Put gravel on top of that, clean gravel, so that you can lift it out later on when you want to rewash your sand, and you're golden. That's all there is to it. That's the coarse filter. The fine filter, you're doing the same thing, but you're using diatomaceous earth. And if you're using food-grade diatomaceous earth, you don't even have to do the washing process. It's straightforward, it's easy. You drill holes in the bucket, you put the cloth on the bottom, put the diatomaceous earth on top of it. So, 6 to 8 inches is plenty. Get it good and wet so it settles, and then again, cloth on top with gravel on top of that to make sure that it doesn't, if you are pouring water into it, that you don't channel down through the diatomaceous earth. And that's it. That's all there is. That's the easiest filter of all of them to build. Okay. We may end up doing a video of how to do that, but it's the same process, only less involved than this one. You're just using diatomaceous earth instead of sand. All right, leave comments below if you have any improvements or any suggestions or insults or whatever. Go ahead and throw them at me. Try to keep it clean, and hang in there, and do a good job with your prep.